If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think will happen next. Your support means everything, and I love reading your theories about where this story is heading. The crystal chandelier in Nathan Crawford's office cast prismatic light across his mahogany desk as he ended another call with another specialist who had no answers. 8 months. 8 agonizing months of watching his daughter struggle to breathe, of sleepless nights, listening to her labored wheezing through the baby monitor he still kept by his bed, even though Emma was 5 years old now. The sound haunted him even during the day, a constant reminder of his failure to protect the only person in this world who truly mattered. "Mr. Crawford?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The new nanny candidate is here." Nathan rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar tension headache building. The 14th candidate in 3 months. None of them lasted. Some couldn't handle Emma's medical needs, others couldn't handle him. He knew he was difficult, demanding, cold, impossible to please. But this was his daughter's life, and he refused to apologize for having standards. If that made him a monster in the eyes of employment agencies across Manhattan, so be it. Send her in. The woman who walked through his door wasn't what he expected. No designer outfit trying to impress. No nervous smile seeking approval. Olivia Bennett wore simple dark pants and a cream blouse, her chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. But it was her eyes that caught him, green, steady, and holding something he recognized with uncomfortable clarity. Pain. The kind that never fully heals, that you learn to carry rather than cure. "Mr. Crawford." She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. "Thank you for seeing me. Your resume says you were a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital." He didn't offer her a seat. Why would someone with your qualifications want to be a nanny? Most candidates would have stumbled over that question, would have offered some rehearsed answer about loving children or seeking work-life balance. Olivia met his gaze without flinching. "Because I'm good with children who need extra care. And because sometimes the best way to help isn't from behind a hospital desk." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I'm offering today." She tilted her head slightly, and he noticed how the afternoon light caught the copper undertones in her hair. "Do you want someone who'll tell you what you want to hear, or someone who'll actually help your daughter?" Nathan felt something shift in his chest. Irritation, certainly, but also something more unsettling. Intrigue. "You're either very confident or very foolish, Miss Bennett. I prefer to think of it as efficient. We both know you've been through a dozen nannies. I'm not interested in wasting either of our time with pleasantries that don't matter." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same intensity he brought to hostile negotiations. There was more to this woman than her modest resume suggested. The way she held herself spoke of someone who'd once commanded respect in rooms far more intimidating than this one. Someone who'd lost something precious and was still learning to live without it. "My daughter has a respiratory condition that no doctor can diagnose," he said finally. "She struggles to breathe, especially at night. She's been through every test, every specialist, every treatment available in the country. Nothing works." I read her file. Olivia's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "The one your assistant sent. I noticed some inconsistencies in the symptom patterns that the specialist seemed to have overlooked." Nathan straightened in his chair. "What inconsistencies?" "The breathing difficulties started 8 months ago, correct? Right after you hired a new household staff member." She pulled a small notebook from her bag, the pages worn from frequent use. "Your housekeeper, Mrs. Blackwood. She started the same week Emma's symptoms began." "That's a coincidence." "Maybe." Olivia tucked the notebook away. "I don't believe in coincidences when it comes to sick children, Mr. Crawford, but I do believe in answers, and I intend to find them." For the first time in 8 long months, Nathan felt something other than despair when thinking about Emma's condition. It felt dangerously like hope. "You're hired," he said. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "You haven't asked about my salary requirements." "I don't care about your salary requirements." "Careful, Mr. Crawford." The corner of her mouth twitched with barely suppressed amusement. "Some might think you're not as ruthless as your reputation suggests. Some would be wrong. I'm sure they would." She stood, and he noticed how gracefully she moved, like someone trained to navigate spaces without disturbing them. "When do I start?" "Now. I'll have someone show you to your quarters and introduce you to Emma." He paused at his office door. "Miss Bennet, whatever you're running from, I don't care, as long as you help my daughter." Something flickered in her green eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of one wounded soul seeing another. "I'll do more than help her, Mr. Crawford. I'll find out what's really wrong." She was gone before he could respond, leaving behind only the faint scent of lavender and the unsettling feeling that Olivia Bennet had already seen right through every wall he'd spent 3 years building. Emma Crawford was small for her age, with her father's dark hair and her mother's blue eyes that had seen far too much sadness for a 5-year-old. She sat in the corner of her elaborate playroom, surrounded by expensive toys she never touched, porcelain dolls in glass cases, a miniature kitchen imported from Paris, stuffed animals that still had their tags, struggling to pull air into her tiny lungs with a sound that made Olivia's heart ache. Every wheeze was a reminder of how badly this child had been failed. "Emma." Olivia knelt beside her, keeping her voice gentle and warm. "I'm Olivia. I'm going to be taking care of you." The little girl looked up with suspicion that broke Olivia's heart. No child should look at the world with such wariness. "The other nannies always leave." "I'm not other nannies." "That's what they all say." Olivia smiled sadly. "You're right. That is what they all say. So I won't make any promises. Instead, I'll just show you. Okay?" Emma studied her for a long moment with those heartbreaking blue eyes, then nodded almost imperceptibly. "My chest hurts." "I know, sweetheart." Olivia sat down cross-legged on the floor, ignoring the expensive Persian rug that probably cost more than a year of her old salary. "Can you tell me when it hurts the most?" "At night, after Mrs. Blackwood brings my special milk." Olivia's nursing instincts went on high alert, every sense sharpening. "Special milk? She says it helps me sleep, but it makes my nose feel funny." The pieces were starting to form a picture, and Olivia didn't like what she was seeing. "Emma, can I look at your nose? I promise I'll be very gentle." The little girl hesitated, then nodded. Olivia pulled a small penlight from her pocket, old habits from her nursing days that she'd never been able to abandon, and carefully examined Emma's nasal passages. What she saw made her blood run cold. There was something there, something that shouldn't be there. Lodged deep in Emma's nasal cavity, barely visible, was a small object. It looked like it had been deliberately placed. "Emma, honey, I need to talk to your daddy. Will you be okay here for a few minutes?" Nathan was still in his office when Olivia burst through the door without knocking. He looked up, irritation flashing across his handsome features. "Miss Bennet, I expect—" "There's something in your daughter's nose," she interrupted, her voice tight with urgency. "Something that's been placed there deliberately. And based on what Emma just told me, I think I know who's responsible." Nathan's face went pale beneath his expensive tan. "What are you talking about?" "I need to examine Emma properly, with the right equipment. But I can see something lodged in her nasal passage." Olivia kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "She told me her symptoms worsen after Mrs. Blackwood brings her special milk at night. That's not a coincidence, Nathan. Mrs. Blackwood has been with this household for 15 years. She was my wife's most trusted—" Nathan stopped abruptly, his jaw tightening. "Your wife's," Olivia repeated softly. "Not yours." The silence between them crackled with unspoken implications. Nathan moved to the window, his broad shoulders tense beneath his tailored suit, staring out at the Manhattan skyline without seeing it. "My wife, Catherine, died 3 years ago. Officially, it was an accident, a fall down the stairs." His voice was flat, emotionless, but Olivia recognized the controlled tone of someone who'd learned to bury their pain so deep it had become part of their foundation. "Unofficially, I've never believed it. I'm sorry," and she meant it. She knew something about losing people under suspicious circumstances, about living with questions that might never be answered. Catherine's family, the Harringtons, they own 40% of Crawford Industries. Her mother, Victoria, has been fighting me for custody of Emma since the day Catherine died." Nathan turned to face Olivia, and she saw the barely contained fury in his dark eyes. "If someone is deliberately harming my daughter, then we need evidence before we make accusations." Olivia stepped closer, drawn to him despite her better judgment. "I need to take Emma to a hospital, discreetly, someone I trust." "And who exactly do you trust, Miss Bennet?" His eyes narrowed with the sharp intelligence that had built his empire. "You appeared out of nowhere with a mysterious past and convenient qualifications. Why should I trust you?" It was a fair question, one she'd been dreading since she first saw the job posting. 3 years ago, I was the head pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital," she said quietly. "I discovered that one of our attending physicians was deliberately misdiagnosing children from wealthy families, keeping them sick to generate more hospital revenue. When I tried to report it, he destroyed my career, falsified records, accused me of medical negligence. I lost my license, my reputation, everything." Nathan's expression shifted from suspicion to something more complex. "You were a whistleblower." "I was someone who wouldn't stay quiet while children suffered." Olivia met his gaze steadily, refusing to be ashamed of the truth. "Sound familiar?" For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Nathan nodded slowly. "There's a private clinic on the Upper East Side. Dr. Sarah Chen. She owes me a favor, and she's the best pediatric ENT specialist in the city. We'll take Emma there tonight, after Mrs. Blackwood leaves for the evening." "You believe me?" "I believe that you're the first person in 8 months who's actually looked at my daughter instead of just her test results." He moved closer, and Olivia caught his scent. Expensive cologne and something warmer underneath, something that made her pulse quicken. "I also believe that you're running from something, just like I am. We all have our demons, Mr. Crawford." "Nathan," his voice dropped lower, intimate despite the professional setting, "if we're going to uncover whatever conspiracy is threatening my daughter, you might as well call me Nathan." "Olivia." She offered her hand again, and this time when he took it, neither of them let go immediately. The warmth of his touch radiated up her arm, and she felt her heart skip in a way she hadn't experienced in years, not since before Boston, before everything fell apart. "And I should warn you, I've already made some powerful enemies by refusing to stay quiet. If you're associating with me, they might become your enemies too. I have plenty of enemies of my own." A ghost of a smile crossed his face, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. "A few more won't make a difference." The clinic was quiet when they arrived that evening, the city lights twinkling against the darkening sky outside the windows. Emma was wrapped in a blanket and half asleep in her father's arms, her small fingers curled trustingly into his shirt collar. Dr. Chen met them at a private entrance, her professional demeanor barely hiding her curiosity as she led them through sterile corridors that smelled of antiseptic and hope. "Nathan, when you called, I have to admit I was surprised. You usually prefer to suffer in silence." "This isn't about me." He shifted Emma gently. "It's about my daughter." Dr. Chen led them to an examination room equipped with specialized imaging equipment. As she examined Emma, Olivia explained what she'd observed, while Nathan paced like a caged lion. "There." Dr. Chen pointed to the screen showing the endoscopic image. "Miss Bennet was right. There's a small object lodged in the posterior nasal cavity. It looks like cotton, actually. Tightly packed cotton that's been saturated with something." "Saturated with what?" Nathan's voice was deadly calm. "I'll need to extract it and run tests, but based on the inflammation pattern, I'd guess some kind of irritant. Nothing lethal, but something that would cause persistent respiratory distress." Dr. Chen looked at them both. "This wasn't an accident. Someone placed this deliberately and has been maintaining it." Emma stirred on the examination table. "Daddy, I'm here, sweetheart." Nathan was at her side instantly, his cold executive mask crumbling as he stroked her hair. "You're going to be okay. Olivia found what was making you sick." Emma's blue eyes found Olivia's. "I told you my nose felt funny." "You did." Olivia smiled gently. "You were very brave, Emma, and you're going to feel so much better soon." The extraction procedure was quick. Emma barely flinched, her small hand clutching her father's fingers, while Olivia held her other hand. When Dr. Chen finally removed the foreign object, the relief in the room was palpable. "I'm sending this to the lab immediately," Dr. Chen said. "But Emma should start breathing easier within days once the inflammation subsides." Nathan looked at his daughter, then at Olivia, and for a moment the careful walls he'd built seemed to crumble. "Thank you." I don't know how to." "You don't have to thank me." Olivia squeezed Emma's hand one last time. "But we do need to figure out who did this and why." "I think I already know why." Nathan's expression hardened again. "Victoria Harrington has been trying to prove I'm an unfit father for years. What better way than to show I can't even keep my daughter healthy? Your mother-in-law, she would hurt her own granddaughter?" Catherine's death made Victoria unstable. She blames me, has always blamed me. In her mind, Emma belongs with the Harringtons, not with me. Nathan lifted his sleeping daughter gently. "Mrs. Blackwood has been reporting to Victoria since the day Catherine died. I've known for years, but I never thought she'd actually harm Emma." Olivia felt cold fury rising in her chest. "Then we need evidence, real evidence that will hold up in court." "We—" Nathan paused at the door, Emma cradled against his chest. "You've already done more than I ever expected, Olivia. This isn't your fight. I told you." She met his dark eyes steadily. "I don't stay quiet while children suffer. Emma isn't just a patient to me anymore. She's—" She stopped, surprised by the emotion threatening her voice. "She matters." "She's not the only one," Nathan said quietly, and the weight of unspoken meaning hung between them as they walked out into the Manhattan night. The next week brought rapid changes to the Crawford household. Emma's breathing improved dramatically, her cheeks gaining color for the first time in months. She began to laugh again, to play, to be the child she'd never had the chance to be, and Olivia found herself falling, not just for the little girl who now insisted on bedtime stories every night, but for the man who sat outside Emma's door each evening, listening through the crack as Olivia wove tales of brave princesses and reformed dragons. "You don't have to lurk in the hallway," she told him one night after Emma had fallen asleep. "You could come in." Nathan straightened, caught. "I didn't want to intrude. On your own daughter's bedtime? On whatever magic you've created with her." He fell into step beside her as they walked toward the library. "She's never been this happy. Not even before Catherine died. Children are resilient. They just need to feel safe." They reached the library, and Nathan poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking. Olivia accepted hers, noting how natural this had become, these quiet evening conversations after Emma slept. "The lab results came back," he said. "The cotton was saturated with capsaicin oil. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but more than enough to cause chronic inflammation and breathing difficulties. Mrs. Blackwood, gone. I confronted her this morning. She denied everything, of course, but when I mentioned I had the lab results, she packed her bags within the hour." "And Victoria Harrington?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's more complicated. I can't prove she directed this. Mrs. Blackwood is too loyal or too afraid to implicate her. And Victoria has too much power, too many connections, so she just gets away with it." Olivia couldn't hide her frustration. "She nearly destroyed your daughter's health, and she faces no consequences?" "Not no consequences." Nathan set down his glass. "I'm done playing defense. Victoria wants a war, she'll get one. I'm filing for full custody with a restraining order, and I'm going to expose every dirty secret the Harrington family has ever buried." Olivia knew she was in trouble when she started counting the hours until Emma's bedtime. Not because she wanted the little girl to sleep, but because bedtime meant those quiet moments with Nathan in the library. The whiskey, the conversations that started about Emma and somehow wandered into deeper, more dangerous territory. The way his eyes softened when he thought she wasn't looking. "You're smiling at your coffee," Emma observed one morning, her voice finally clear without the constant wheeze. Are you thinking about something nice? Just grateful that you're feeling better. Olivia smoothed the girl's dark hair. What do you want to do today? Can we go to the park? I haven't been to the park in forever. Mrs. Blackwood always said I was too sick. The casual cruelty of it made Olivia's heart clench. The park sounds perfect. Nathan found them in the foyer as they were putting on coats. He looked exhausted. Olivia knew he'd been up late strategizing with his lawyers, but his face transformed when he saw Emma ready to go outside. Going somewhere. The park! Emma bounced on her toes. Olivia said I could. Can you come too, Daddy? Please? The vulnerability in the little girl's voice was heartbreaking. Olivia wondered how many times Emma had asked and been told no. Nathan checked his watch, and Olivia saw the familiar tension of a man being pulled between responsibility and desire. I have a board meeting in an hour. The board meeting can wait. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Both Crawford stared at her. I mean, with all due respect, Mr. Crawford, your daughter hasn't been to a park in 8 months. The board will survive. Is that your professional opinion as a nanny? It's my professional opinion as someone who knows that little girls need their fathers. Olivia held his gaze. And fathers need their little girls. Something shifted in Nathan's dark eyes. He reached for his coat. Let me just make a call. Central Park in early autumn was a symphony of golden leaves and laughing children. The crisp air carried the scent of changing seasons, and the morning sunlight filtered through the canopy of red and gold above them, like nature's own cathedral. Emma ran ahead on steady legs, her breathing easy, her laughter echoing across the meadow, a sound Nathan realized he'd almost forgotten. Olivia watched him watching his daughter, and something in her chest tightened at the raw emotion on his face. Thank you, he said quietly, his voice thick, for pushing me. Someone has to. You're very good at hiding in your office. Hiding? He raised an eyebrow. I'm running a multi-billion-dollar company. You're running from the fact that your daughter looks exactly like your dead wife. The words came out gentler than she'd intended. And that every time you see her, it reminds you of everything you lost. Nathan stopped walking. For a terrible moment, Olivia thought she'd gone too far. Then he exhaled slowly, like a man releasing a burden he'd carried too long. Catherine and I, our marriage wasn't what people thought. She was beautiful, brilliant, from the right family. On paper, we were perfect. He watched Emma climbing on a nearby structure, his expression distant. But she was never happy. Not with me, not with Emma, not with anything. In the end, I think she was running from something too. What happened the night she died? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. I was traveling, business in Tokyo. Victoria called me at 3 a.m. to tell me my wife was dead. By the time I got home, the funeral was already planned. The Harringtons had taken over everything, including the narrative. You think they're hiding something about Catherine's death? I think there are too many questions no one wants answered. Nathan turned to face her. My investigators found something last week. Before she died, Catherine had been making large cash withdrawals. Thousands of dollars a week for months. I never knew about it. Where was the money going? That's what I intend to find out. His eyes met hers, and Olivia saw not just determination, but something more personal. But right now, in this moment, I don't want to think about Catherine or Victoria or any of it. I want to watch my daughter play and figure out why I can't stop thinking about you. Olivia's heart stuttered. Nathan, I know it's complicated. You work for me. We're in the middle of a custody battle. There are 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea. He stepped closer. But I've spent 3 years feeling nothing, Olivia. Nothing but guilt and grief and the cold satisfaction of business deals. And then you walked into my office and looked at me like you could see right through every wall I'd built. Maybe because I recognized those walls. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I built my own after Boston. Tell me. Not here. She glanced at Emma, who was waving at them from the top of a slide. Not yet, but I'm not ready to leave, Nathan. Whatever this is between us, I want to see where it leads. Even knowing what you're walking into? I think I walked into it the moment I took this job. She smiled despite herself. You're very annoying, you know, all brooding and mysterious and ridiculously good-looking." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Ridiculously? Don't let it go to your head. Your ego is quite healthy enough. My ego has taken significant damage since you arrived. I'm not used to people telling me when I'm being an idiot. Then you should keep me around." The words hung between them, weighted with possibility. Someone needs to. Emma chose that moment to come running back, her cheeks pink with joy. "Daddy, Olivia, come push me on the swings, please." They spent 2 hours in the park, the board meeting forgotten, the custody battle temporarily set aside. Olivia watched Nathan transform from the cold CEO she'd first met into a father who pushed his daughter on swings, who chased her around trees, who let her ride on his shoulders when she got tired. This, she thought, is who he really is beneath all the armor. The moment shattered when Nathan's phone rang. His expression darkened as he listened, and Olivia knew something was wrong. "We need to go," he said tightly after ending the call. "Victoria filed an emergency motion. There's a hearing tomorrow morning. She's claiming Emma is in danger." "What? How can she? She has photos." Nathan's voice was barely controlled. "Of you and Emma at the hospital. She's claiming I took Emma for unauthorized medical treatment and that you, someone with no current nursing license, performed procedures on my daughter." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "She's been watching us. She's been watching everything." Nathan lifted Emma, who had fallen asleep, against his shoulder. "And she's using you to get to me. Whatever happened in Boston, Victoria is going to dig it up and use it at that hearing. Then let her." Olivia's voice was steady, even as her stomach churned. "I'm not going to hide anymore. If exposing my past is the price of protecting Emma, then that's what I'll do." "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do." She touched his arm, feeling the tension vibrating through him. 3 years ago, I let powerful people destroy my reputation because I was afraid to fight back. I've regretted it every single day since. I won't make that mistake again." Nathan stared at her for a long moment, then carefully balancing Emma on one arm, he reached out and cupped Olivia's face with his free hand. "Whoever hurt you in Boston," he said quietly, "I'm going to make them pay. After we destroy Victoria Harrington, I'm going after everyone who took your life from you." "Nathan, you don't have to." "I want to." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You saved my daughter. Let me save you." It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her. Also the most terrifying, because Olivia was beginning to realize that Nathan Crawford wasn't just her employer, wasn't just the father of a little girl she adored. He was becoming everything. The hearing the next morning was in a private courthouse, away from media attention. The wood-paneled room smelled of old money and older secrets. Victoria Harrington sat at the opposing table, immaculate in designer black, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, radiating cold triumph like a winter queen surveying her domain. Her lawyers had stacked files in front of them, thick manila folders that Olivia knew contained every damning detail of her past, every failure she'd tried to leave behind in Boston. "Miss Bennett," Victoria's lawyer stood, his voice dripping with false concern. "You were employed at Boston Children's Hospital until 3 years ago, correct?" "Yes." "And you were terminated for medical negligence, were you not?" "I was accused of medical negligence." Olivia kept her voice steady. "The accusations were false, manufactured by a physician I reported for misconduct." "That's your version. The hospital records tell a different story." The lawyer produced a document. "According to these records, you endangered multiple patients through improper care. You were stripped of your nursing license and—" "Objection." Nathan's lawyer rose. "Miss Bennett's employment history is not relevant to Emma Crawford's welfare." "It's entirely relevant," Victoria interjected, her voice sharp. "This woman, with no valid medical credentials, performed an unauthorized procedure on my granddaughter. She's dangerous." "The procedure was a simple extraction performed by Dr. Sarah Chen," Nathan said calmly. "Miss Bennett merely identified the problem that dozens of specialists missed. The problem, I might add, that was caused by someone in your employ." Victoria's composure flickered. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm implying that Mrs. Blackwood, your plant in my household, was systematically poisoning my daughter to sabotage my custody of her. I have evidence. Lab results proving that a capsaicin-soaked object was deliberately placed in Emma's nasal cavity. Medical records showing the timeline correlates exactly with Mrs. Blackwood's access." The judge leaned forward with sudden interest. "Mr. Crawford, these are serious allegations. I'm prepared to prove every one of them, Your Honor." Nathan stood, his presence commanding the room. "I'm also prepared to subpoena Mrs. Blackwood and compel her testimony regarding who directed her actions," Victoria's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. For the first time, Olivia saw fear behind the older woman's icy exterior. "Perhaps," the judge said slowly, "we should table this hearing pending a full investigation into Mr. Crawford's allegations." "Your Honor," Victoria began. "Mrs. Harrington, if there's any truth to what Mr. Crawford is saying, you could be facing criminal charges. I strongly suggest you consult with your attorneys before this proceeds." The judge gathered his papers. "This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Crawford retains full custody pending investigation." Victoria's eyes met Nathan's across the courtroom, and Olivia saw pure hatred burning there. "This isn't over," that look said. "Not by a long way." But as Nathan took Olivia's hand and led her out of the courthouse into the bright morning sun, she found she didn't care about Victoria's threats. They had won this battle, and whatever storms came next, whatever darkness Victoria Harrington tried to bring upon them, they would face it together, side by side, as partners, as something more. The victory in the courthouse felt hollow by the time they returned to Crawford Manor. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the tall windows, but the light felt cold, unwelcoming. Nathan's phone had been buzzing relentlessly. Board members, shareholders, business partners, concerned acquaintances, and opportunistic journalists, all demanding explanations for the rumors that were already spreading through Manhattan's elite circles like wildfire through dry brush. Victoria Harrington may have lost the battle, but she was winning the war of public opinion with ruthless efficiency. Crawford Industries stock dropped 4% in the last hour. His CFO reported grimly over the phone. "The Harrington family is threatening to sell their shares. If they dump 40% of the company on the open market, I know what happens." Nathan pinched the bridge of his nose. "Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning." Olivia stood in the doorway of his study, watching the weight of his empire settle back onto his shoulders. Emma was upstairs with the cook, enjoying her first meal in months without struggling to breathe between bites. The little girl's recovery should have been cause for celebration. Instead, Nathan looked like a man preparing for war. "How bad is it?" she asked quietly. "Bad enough." He set down his phone. "Victoria is leveraging everything she has. Board members are getting calls suggesting I'm mentally unstable, that I'm endangering my daughter by hiring unqualified staff, that the company would be better off without me at the helm. Because you tried to protect Emma? Because I dared to fight back." Nathan moved to the window, his silhouette stark against the fading afternoon light. "The Harringtons have controlled this city for generations. They don't lose gracefully." Olivia crossed the room to stand beside him. "What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart clench. Not defeat, but calculation. The cold, strategic mind that had built an empire from nothing. "Which is why I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Anything. The things they're going to say about you at that board meeting tomorrow, about Boston, about your license, about everything, are they true? Any of them?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "You're asking if I actually hurt those children. I'm asking because I need to know what ammunition they have. If there's anything real they can use against you, against us, I need to prepare for it." Olivia felt the familiar shame rising in her chest, the weight of accusations she'd never been able to fully escape. "I told you the truth. Dr. Harrison was deliberately misdiagnosing patients. When I reported him, he retaliated. He altered records, convinced colleagues to lie, destroyed everything I'd built. But the accusations themselves, they were fabricated, every single one. Can you prove it? I tried. For 2 years I tried. No one would listen. Harrison had connections, money, influence. I had nothing but my word. Her voice cracked. I thought coming here would be a fresh start. I thought I could finally leave it behind. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. I believe you, he said simply, but believing you isn't enough. We need evidence. Real, documented proof that Harrison lied, because tomorrow morning Victoria is going to use your past to destroy both of us. Before Olivia could respond, Nathan's phone rang again. This time his expression shifted from weary to alarmed. What? When? He listened intently, his grip on Olivia's hand tightening. Don't let anyone touch anything. I'm on my way. What's wrong? That was my head of security. Someone broke into the corporate archives last night. They took files, specifically files related to Catherine's death and the original investigation. Nathan grabbed his coat. Stay here with Emma. Don't let anyone in except staff you recognize. Nathan, wait. But he was already gone, leaving Olivia alone with a growing sense of dread. Someone was erasing evidence. Someone was covering tracks. And she had the terrible feeling that whatever secrets the Harringtons were hiding went far deeper than a custody dispute. The hours crawled by. Olivia put Emma to bed, read her 3 stories, and sat in the darkened hallway long after the little girl fell asleep. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. What had really happened to Catherine Crawford? Why were the Harringtons so desperate to control Emma, and what did any of it have to do with her? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You should have stayed in Boston. Leave now, or you'll regret it. Olivia's blood ran cold. She was still staring at the message when she heard footsteps in the hallway below. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that didn't belong to Nathan. Moving silently, she crept to the top of the stairs. In the dim light of the foyer, she could make out 2 figures, a man and a woman speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The woman's silver hair caught the light from the window, and Olivia felt her heart stop. Victoria Harrington was in the house. Can't let him find those records, Victoria was saying. If he discovers what Catherine was really doing with that money. It's handled, the man replied. Olivia didn't recognize his voice. The archives have been sanitized. There's nothing left to find. And the girl, the nanny, she's becoming a problem. Crawford is clearly attached to her. If we can't discredit her through the Boston connection, we may need to take more direct action. Olivia pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. Direct action. The words echoed in her mind like a death sentence. I don't want another accident, Victoria said sharply. Catherine's death raised too many questions. We need something cleaner this time. Another accident. The implication was unmistakable. Catherine Crawford hadn't fallen down those stairs. She'd been murdered. And Victoria, her own mother, had been involved. Olivia's hand shook as she reached for her phone to call Nathan, but before she could dial, a floorboard creaked beneath her foot. The voices below went silent. Someone's there, the man said. Olivia ran. She sprinted down the servants' hallway, through the kitchen, and out the back door into the cold night air. Behind her, she heard shouting, footsteps pounding in pursuit. She didn't stop to look back. She couldn't stop. She ran until her lungs burned, until she reached the edge of the property where a gap in the fence led to the neighboring estate. Only then did she pull out her phone and call Nathan with trembling fingers. Victoria was in the house. She gasped when he answered. Nathan, I heard her talking to someone. Catherine didn't fall. They killed her. Victoria killed her own daughter. The silence on the other end was deafening. Where are you? Nathan's voice was ice-cold. Outside the property, the north fence. Stay there. Don't move. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, Nathan's car screeched to a halt beside her. He pulled her into his arms without a word, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Emma? She asked. Safe. I called security before I left. No one is getting near her. He pulled back to look at her face in the dim light. Tell me everything. Every word you heard. Olivia recounted the conversation, watching Nathan's expression grow darker with each detail. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "The money Catherine was withdrawing," he said finally. "I think I know where it was going. My investigators found records of payments to a private detective. Catherine was gathering evidence against her own family." "Evidence of what?" "I don't know yet, but whatever it was, it got her killed." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Victoria has been playing a much longer game than I realized. This isn't just about custody. It's about control, of Emma, of the company, of everything Catherine might have left behind. What do we do?" Nathan looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "We find out what Catherine knew, and then we make Victoria pay for every single thing she's done." But when they returned to Crawford Manor, they found something that changed everything. On Nathan's desk, placed deliberately where he would find it, was a file folder. Inside were documents, photographs, newspaper clippings, and a letter in Catherine's handwriting. Nathan read the letter in silence, his face draining of color. When he finally looked up at Olivia, his eyes held something she'd never seen before: devastation. "Nathan, what is it?" He handed her the letter without a word. Olivia read it once, then again, unable to process what she was seeing. "Dear Nathan," the letter began, "if you're reading this, I'm already dead. There are things I should have told you years ago, secrets I kept to protect you and Emma, but silence hasn't kept anyone safe. My mother is not who you think she is, neither am I, and neither, I'm afraid, is the woman you've trusted with our daughter." Olivia's hands trembled as she held Catherine's letter. The words blurred before her eyes, but their meaning was devastatingly clear. Catherine had known something about her, something that connected their lives long before Olivia ever walked through the doors of Crawford Manor. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I never met Catherine. I didn't even know who she was until I applied for this job." Nathan stood rigid by the window, his back to her. The tension radiating from him was palpable, filling the room like a physical presence. "Keep reading," Olivia forced herself to continue. Catherine's elegant handwriting detailed a web of connections that seemed impossible. Dr. Marcus Harrison, the physician who had destroyed Olivia's career in Boston, had been on the Harrington family payroll for over a decade. The children he had deliberately misdiagnosed weren't random wealthy families. They were specifically targeted: children of business rivals, political opponents, anyone who stood in the way of Harrington interests. And Olivia's report, her attempt to expose him, had threatened to unravel everything. "Harrison wasn't just protecting himself when he came after you," Nathan said, his voice hollow. "He was protecting the Harringtons. Your evidence could have exposed their entire operation." "But why would Catherine know about this? Why would she write about me?" Nathan finally turned to face her. In his hands was a photograph that had been tucked inside the letter, a woman with chestnut hair and green eyes holding a newborn baby. It was Olivia's mother. "Catherine was investigating her family's crimes," Nathan said quietly. "She documented everything she found, including the fact that one of their early victims was a pediatric nurse in Chicago named Margaret Bennett. She was trying to expose hospital billing fraud when she suddenly lost custody of her infant daughter. The father was paid off, the record sealed, and the child grew up never knowing her mother tried to fight for her." Olivia felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "That's not possible. My mother died when I was a baby. My father said—" "Your father lied, or he was paid to lie." Nathan handed her the photograph. "According to Catherine's research, Margaret Bennett didn't die. She was institutionalized, declared mentally unfit after a carefully orchestrated smear campaign. She spent 15 years in a psychiatric facility before she actually passed away, still writing letters to a daughter she was never allowed to see." The room spun. Olivia gripped the edge of the desk to stay upright, her knuckles white against the dark wood. Her entire life, her understanding of who she was, where she came from, the foundation upon which she'd built her identity, was crumbling around her like a sandcastle meeting the tide. "This is why they targeted me in Boston," she realized. the pieces finally clicking into place with devastating clarity. Not just because of what I knew about Harrison, because of who I am, Margaret Bennett's daughter. They recognized my name. They knew exactly who I was and what I might uncover. They were afraid I might find out the truth about what they did to my mother. And you did exactly what your mother tried to do, Nathan said. You tried to expose corruption. You refused to stay quiet. They couldn't let that happen twice. Olivia sank into a chair, the photograph clutched to her chest. The woman in the picture had her eyes, her stubborn jaw, the same determined set to her shoulders. All her life, she'd been told her mother was weak, mentally fragile, unable to cope with motherhood. It had been the cruelest lie of all. Catherine was going to expose everything, she said slowly. That's why they killed her. Yes. Nathan knelt before her, taking her hands in his. But Catherine was smart. She didn't just gather evidence, she hid it. Multiple copies in multiple locations. The Harringtons have been searching for years, destroying what they could find. But there's still one copy they never located. Where? I don't know. Catherine's letter says the key is with someone who loved her unconditionally, someone she trusted with her life. Nathan's eyes searched Olivia's face. I thought she meant me, but now I'm not sure. A small voice came from the doorway. Mommy said to keep it safe forever. They both turned. Emma stood in her pajamas, clutching a worn teddy bear to her chest. Her blue eyes were wide and solemn. Emma? Nathan's voice cracked. What do you mean, sweetheart? Mommy gave me something before she went to heaven. She said it was very important. She said to never show Grandma Victoria. Emma held out the teddy bear. She put it inside Mr. Button's. Nathan took the bear with shaking hands. Carefully, he felt along the seams until he found a small, almost invisible zipper hidden in the stitching. Inside was a flash drive, small, innocuous, and potentially containing enough evidence to destroy the Harrington Empire. Oh, Catherine, Nathan breathed. You brilliant, brave woman. He plugged the drive into his laptop. Files upon files filled the screen. Financial records, recorded conversations, photographs, legal documents, evidence of fraud, bribery, medical malpractice, and at least 3 suspicious deaths that had been ruled accidents, including documentation of the night Catherine died, a security camera feed from a neighbor's property that the police had never seen. The footage showed Victoria Harrington entering Crawford Manor through a back entrance at 11 p.m. and leaving alone at 2 in the morning, exactly 30 minutes before Catherine's body was discovered at the bottom of the stairs. She did it herself, Olivia said, horror washing over her. Victoria killed her own daughter with her own hands. Nathan's face was stone. Call the police, call the FBI, call everyone. This ends tonight. The next hours were a blur of phone calls, uniformed officers, federal agents, and the kind of controlled chaos that accompanies the dismantling of a criminal dynasty. Victoria Harrington was arrested at her penthouse at 3 in the morning, still in her silk robe, her silver hair disheveled, her face a mask of disbelief as handcuffs clicked around her wrists with a sound that seemed to echo through the marble halls of her empire. You can't do this, she snarled as they led her away, her voice echoing through the empty penthouse. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do to you? I will destroy every single one of you. I know exactly what you did, Nathan replied coldly, his voice steady and unforgiving. And now so does everyone else, including the judge who will sentence you. By dawn, the story had broken across every major news outlet. Harrington Holdings stock plummeted. Board members resigned en masse. The empire Victoria had spent a lifetime building crumbled in a matter of hours, brought down by the evidence her own daughter had died to protect. Through it all, Olivia sat in the library with Emma curled in her lap, both of them too exhausted to sleep, but too wired to rest. The little girl's breathing was easy and clear now, her face peaceful despite the chaos swirling around them like a storm they could observe but no longer feared. Outside, the first light of dawn was beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning. Is Grandma Victoria going away forever? Emma asked quietly. Yes, sweetheart. She's going away for a very long time. Good. Emma snuggled closer. She was mean. She made my nose hurt and she made Mommy fall down the stairs. I saw her that night, you know. I told Mommy about the secret medicine Mrs. Blackwood put in my milk, and Mommy got really mad. Then Grandma came over and they yelled and yelled. Olivia's heart clenched. This little girl had been carrying this burden for 3 years, too young to fully understand what she'd witnessed, too afraid to tell anyone. You were so brave, Emma. Your Mommy would be so proud of you. Do you think she can see me from heaven? I think, Olivia said softly, she's watching over you every single day. Nathan found them there an hour later, slumped together on the library sofa. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching them. This woman who had come into his life as a stranger and had become everything, and the daughter he'd almost lost. His girls, his family. He crossed the room and knelt beside them, brushing hair from Olivia's face with gentle fingers. She stirred, her green eyes opening to find his dark ones inches away. "Hey," she murmured. "Hey yourself." He kissed her forehead softly. "It's over. Victoria is in custody. Harrison has been arrested. The whole network is unraveling. What about my nursing license? Being restored as we speak. I have a team of lawyers working on it. By next week, you'll have a full exoneration and a public apology from Boston Children's Hospital." He paused. "Along with a rather substantial settlement if you want it. I don't care about money." "I know." Nathan smiled. A real smile, the first she'd seen from him in days. "That's one of the many things I love about you." Olivia's breath caught. "Love? Did I forget to mention that part?" His hand cupped her face. "Olivia Bennet, I am completely, hopelessly, inconveniently in love with you. I think I have been since the moment you walked into my office and refused to be intimidated by my bad mood. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the trauma, the weight of revelation still settling into her bones." Olivia laughed. "Your bad mood? Is that what we're calling it? I prefer distinguished brooding. You were a nightmare. I was efficient." He grinned. "You're going to have to get used to the brooding. It comes with the package." Emma stirred between them, one eye opening sleepily. "Are you going to kiss her, Daddy? Because that's what happens in all the movies when people say they love each other." Nathan raised an eyebrow at Olivia. "Well, the child has spoken." Far be it from me to disappoint her. When their lips met, it felt like coming home. Like finding the place she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing it existed. The kiss was soft, tender, full of promises for a future neither of them had dared to imagine. 6 months later, Olivia stood in the sunlit conservatory of Crawford Manor, barely recognizing the woman in the mirror. Her wedding dress, simple, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious gowns she'd seen in bridal magazines, caught the light like captured starlight. Behind her, Emma bounced excitedly in her flower girl dress, a basket of rose petals clutched in her small hands. "You look like a princess," Emma declared, "even prettier than the ones in my storybooks." "I think you might be biased, sweetheart." "What's biased mean?" "It means you love me, so you think I'm beautiful even when I'm not." Emma's face scrunched in confusion. "But you are beautiful. Daddy says so all the time. He says you're the most beautiful woman in the world, and he's the luckiest man alive. And also that your eyes make him forget how to do math." Olivia laughed, her heart full to bursting. "He said that?" He says lots of mushy stuff when he thinks I'm not listening." Emma tugged at Olivia's hand. "Can I call you Mommy after today? Daddy said I should ask you first, because it's important to use our words about feelings." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. She knelt down to Emma's level, taking the little girl's hands in hers. "I would be honored to be your mommy, Emma. There's nothing in this world I want more." The ceremony was held in Central Park, in the same spot where Nathan had first told Olivia he couldn't stop thinking about her. The autumn air was crisp and golden, perfect for new beginnings. 200 guests filled the white chairs, business associates who had stood by Nathan through the scandal, friends who had believed in them when the world didn't, and the loyal staff who had protected Emma through everything. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Even Nathan's CFO, a man legendary for his emotional unavailability, appeared to be struggling with what he insisted were seasonal allergies. Nathan waited at the altar, and Olivia's breath caught when their eyes met. He looked devastating in his dark suit, but it was the expression on his face that undid her. Wonder, love, and a vulnerability he rarely showed the world. This man who had built empires, who had faced down corrupt dynasties and emerged victorious, looked at her like she was his greatest treasure. As she walked down the aisle on legs that trembled slightly, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them here, the mysteries they'd unraveled together, the wounds they'd helped each other heal, the little girl skipping ahead of her, scattering rose petals with abandoned joy and a smile that could light up the darkest room. A year ago, she'd been broken, running from a past she couldn't escape, convinced she would never find peace or love or belonging again. Now, she was walking toward a future she'd never dared to dream, toward a family she'd never expected to find. "You're late," Nathan murmured when she reached him, though his smile suggested he didn't mind in the slightest. "I prefer to think of it as making a dramatic entrance. Is that what we're calling it? Would you rather... I said I was having a minor panic attack about marrying someone with your level of emotional complexity." Nathan's grin widened. "I'll take dramatic entrance." The officiant, a friend from Nathan's college days who had become a minister, cleared his throat. "If you two are done, we have a wedding to conduct." The ceremony was beautiful, traditional, and mercifully brief. When the officiant asked if there were any objections, several guests glanced nervously at the doors, half expecting Victoria Harrington to burst in, despite being securely confined to a federal prison awaiting trial. But the doors remained closed, and the moment passed. "Do you, Nathan James Crawford, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do, absolutely, without question or hesitation. A simple 'I do' would have sufficed. I'm an overachiever." Olivia bit back a laugh as the officiant turned to her. "And do you, Olivia Grace Bennett, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She looked at Nathan, this impossible, infuriating, wonderful man who had given her back her life, her career, her sense of self, who had fought beside her against enemies she couldn't have faced alone, who loved his daughter with fierce devotion and had opened his carefully guarded heart to let Olivia in. "I do." The kiss that sealed their vows was met with thunderous applause. Emma wedged herself between them, demanding to be included, and they lifted her together, a family finally complete. The reception was held at the manor, transformed for the occasion into a wonderland of flowers and candlelight. Speeches were made, tears were shed, and enough champagne flowed to float a small yacht, but the moment Olivia would remember forever came later, when the crowds had thinned, and she found Nathan alone on the terrace, staring up at the stars. "Escaping your own wedding," she teased, sliding her arms around him from behind. "Never." He turned in her embrace, pulling her close. "Just taking a moment, processing everything. Good processing or bad processing? The best kind." He kissed her forehead. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I had a sick daughter, a dead wife, and an empire built on secrets I didn't understand. I'd convinced myself that love was a weakness I couldn't afford, that letting anyone in would only lead to more pain. And now I have you." His voice was rough with emotion. "You walked into my office with your sensible shoes and your sharp tongue, and you saw right through every wall I'd built. You saved my daughter. You solved the mystery of my wife's death. You gave me back my heart. You make it sound like I did all the work. You did the important parts." He cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Olivia Crawford. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. I could never regret you, annoying as you are." "Annoying?" He affected mock outrage. "I'm charming. You're something, all right." Their laughter mingled with the music drifting from inside, and Olivia thought about how strange and wonderful life could be, how tragedy could lead to triumph, how the worst moments could plant seeds for the best ones. The guests were beginning to leave when Nathan's CFO approached them with a tablet in hand. Even on his boss's wedding day, Business couldn't be entirely ignored. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you'd want to see this immediately. The quarterly reports just came in. Crawford Industries posted record profits for the third consecutive quarter, and the board formally voted to remove the Harrington family from all company positions. Nathan nodded, unsurprised. What about the medical foundation? Fully funded and operational. The Margaret Bennett Memorial Wing will open at Boston Children's Hospital next month. The CFO glanced at Olivia with unusual warmth. They've also created a whistleblower protection program in her mother's name. Any healthcare worker who reports misconduct will receive legal support and career protection. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. When Nathan had told her his plans to honor her mother's memory, she'd been overwhelmed. But hearing it confirmed, knowing that Margaret Bennett's suffering would prevent others from facing the same fate, was almost more than she could bear. "Thank you," she whispered to Nathan, "for everything. It's the least I could do." He pulled her close. "Your mother was a hero. She deserves to be remembered as one." As the last guests departed and the manor fell quiet, Olivia found herself in Emma's room, tucking the little girl into bed one final time as her nanny. Tomorrow, she would be something more, something permanent. "Tell me a story," Emma demanded as she did every night, "a really good one." Olivia settled onto the edge of the bed. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a big, beautiful house with her father, who loved her very much. But she was very sick, and no one knew why. Until one day, a woman came to take care of her, a woman who had lost everything and was looking for a place to belong. "Is this our story?" Emma's eyes widened. "It is." The woman discovered that the little girl wasn't really sick at all. Someone was hurting her on purpose. So the woman and the little girl's father worked together to stop the bad people and keep the little girl safe. And then they fell in love, Emma supplied eagerly, and got married and lived happily ever after. Exactly. Olivia kissed her forehead. Happily ever after. Is that really how our story ends? Olivia looked at this child who had stolen her heart, thought of the man waiting for her downstairs and smiled. No, sweetheart. That's how our story begins. Downstairs, Nathan had dismissed the last of the catering staff and stood alone in the empty ballroom, surrounded by the remnants of their celebration, scattered rose petals, half-empty champagne glasses, and the lingering scent of flowers and happiness. When Olivia appeared in the doorway, still in her wedding dress, he crossed to her immediately, pulling her into his arms as if they'd been separated for years rather than minutes. Emma asleep. Finally. She wanted 4 stories tonight. Apparently, weddings are very exciting. They are when you're 5. He swayed gently, dancing to music only they could hear. "So, Mrs. Crawford, any regrets?" "Just one." He stiffened. "What?" "I wish I'd met you sooner." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Think of all the time we wasted being strangers." Nathan relaxed, his arms tightening around her. "We have the rest of our lives to make up for it." And as they danced alone in the empty ballroom, surrounded by fallen rose petals and fading candlelight, 2 hearts that had been broken finding wholeness in each other, Olivia knew that everything she'd survived, Boston, betrayal, the destruction of her career and her confidence, had led her exactly where she needed to be. Home, finally, irrevocably, beautifully home. The end.